What is up, fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Danth Valley coming at you with some good old-fashioned, really crappy NBA content. Before we get into it, just the usual reminder and also my plea to subscribe to us wherever you consume us if you have not done so just yet. If you're not with us on YouTube, hit that sub button, like and comment on videos. Engage with the community. We're really trying to build up HardwoodKnocks on YouTube. It's been a lot slower than I wanted to, so help us out. Hit the sub button. Also, download every episode wherever you get your actual podcast, Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, whatever your player of choice is. If you've done both of these things, one, I love you. Two, tell people about us. Shout us out on Twitter. Retweet our promos. Anything that could help us, again, continue to grow in what is a very saturated, we get it, basketball content market. But look, if you're in the comments and you hate us or you hate listening, we really do put a lot of work into covering the league as thoroughly and as unseriously yet seriously as possible. Let's talk some New York Knicks, shall we? I have already noted that I think the Knicks should fire Tibbs. I do stand by that, but it's really time to talk about their overarching direction. And this was something I thought about a lot after their loss to Oklahoma City on Sunday. Most NBA teams have a discernible direction. These directions aren't always urgent. Think about Orlando, or successful. Think about Brooklyn. Some are reflected in singular players. You could think about Dallas. A few you have to squint to see, like Chicago, but you can, in fact, see them. Others are complicated by surprise, sup Utah, or disappointment, sup Minnesota, but they're nevertheless visible. Scattered throughout the league, though, are a handful of organizations without concrete course. The Knicks are one of them, if not leading that aimless charge. This has been semi-clear for longer than many will care to admit. It is painfully obvious now on the heels of another telltale loss. This one, a 145-135 Sunday defeat at the hands of the Oklahoma City Thunder that evoked effusive boos from the Madison Square Garden crowd, and justifiably so. In many ways, this ended up being the quintessential Knicks loss, a conflux of everything that remains wrong, both fixable and absolute, with a nod to their Jekyll and Hyde extremes. They opened with a 48-point first quarter on 20 of 31 shooting. 9 different players scored in the first 12 minutes. New York led by as many as 13. Over the next 2 quarters, though, the Thunder outscored the Knicks by 28. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander absolutely roasted New York's defense. He scored 21 of his 37 points in the third alone. Oklahoma City ranked hellfire from 3, going 13 of 18, which is over 72% on its triples across those 2 quarters. That's not bad for a team that entered the game 25th in points scored per possession and 29th of 30 teams in 3-point accuracy. One loss is not typically all revealing. Letdowns happen over the length of an 82-game regular season, inexplicably blown leads and all. But this Knicks loss, like many others, featured many of the same issues that have plagued them all year and in seasons past. New York's defense has allowed teams to bomb away from deep without much resistance since this season specifically tipped off. Closeouts on these threes range from half-assed to non-existent for long stretches, and the primary offenders are exactly who you think they are. I'll leave it there. Only the Timberwolves and Toronto Raptors allow a larger share of opponent shots to come as completely uncontested threes. The Knicks rank 27th overall in the frequency with which they surrender long-range attempts. And they don't counteract this volume that they forfeit with a detectable identity elsewhere. They limit looks at the rim, but when you watch them, that does feel like a function of offenses not needing to venture inside the arc for quality shots. The Knicks don't force turnovers or effectively crash the defensive glass. They're 26th in forcing turnovers and 25th in defensive rebounding. That defensive rebounding issue is new. That doesn't make it any less damning. Julius Randle right now is the only Knicks big who averages at an above average rate on the defensive glass. That was a terrible way of saying it, but he's the only Knick big who places better than the 38th percentile in defensive rebounding. Think about that. That's not good. Oklahoma City, going back to that game, did not win the fast break battle on Sunday. It was a 14-14 stalemate. That's something of a minor miracle because the Knicks rank inside the bottom 5 of both transition frequency and points allowed per possession. They are dead last in points allowed per possession after committing a turnover. That's according to Unpredictable. The first few stats are from Cleaning the Glass. Sitting a hair below 500, fewer than 15 games in the season, shouldn't be the end of the world. But this also presumes that the Knicks are built to be better, that their biggest obstacles are coaching, injuries, or work in progress chemistry. Coaching comes closest to being the answer here. Like I said, I already called for the Knicks to fire Tibbs after it was a November 2nd loss to the Atlanta Hawks. People with, let's say, clearly vested interest in the situation weren't thrilled about it. I stand by it. My issues with Tibbs are neither original nor specific to this season. Stubborn roster mismanagement has been his default, even dating back to his Coach of the Year campaign in 2020-2021. And it was on full display in the Thunder game specifically. RJ Barrett picked up his 4th foul with 9 minutes, 58 seconds left in the third quarter. Tibbs then proceeded to sub him out for Evan Fournier. RJ Barrett never saw the floor again. When Tibbs was asked about this after the game, his response predictably lacked substance. He said, "We just got behind by so much that we were just looking for life. And that group that was in there after Barrett subbed out gave us a little bit of a spark. So that's what we went with." That's asinine logic. Fournier has played most of this season like he deeply wants the Knicks to land Victor Wembanyama. In no world is he the answer over Barrett. Never mind that Fournier went 0 for 3 during his 14-ish second half minutes. He was a plus, I think, 6 during that span. But whatever. Barrett is no worse than the second most important player to this organization when you're looking at on the court stuff. It's Jalen Brunson and then him. And that's you're hoping RJ Barrett pops. You're hoping Jalen Brunson continues to play as well as he has. You don't rope RJ to the bench for the chance to maybe, possibly, if you're lucky, potentially win a November matinee against the Thunder. Spelling Barrett for foul trouble, I get it, but that's also debatable in itself. And you could also point to him not having the best season. His performances are littered with drives to the basket that have unplanned or unknown destinations, and he's been frustratingly inconsistent on defense. He was 2 of 10 when Tibbs pulled the plug on Sunday. Still, his play over the previous 7 games, when he was averaging 21.5 points while shooting 53% on twos and 43% from 3, warranted benefit of the doubt. To Tibbs' credit, he did at least dust off Quentin Grimes to chase around Shea. Oh, no, wait, he didn't. That's right. Because Grimes is situational. Because his conditioning isn't up to snuff. Because he suffered a left foot injury that's largely kept him out of the rotation. And because the Knicks are clearly too good to give him reps outside garbage time. And also, though, because Grimes might still be injured based off things that we've heard, in which case, why is he situational, not just out? Transparency has never been the Knicks' preferred mode of operation. So I recognize that Grimes' status might be above Tibbs' pay grade. The continued lack of invention behind lineups and rotations is not. Remember when he actually played Randall and Obi Toppin together for 10 glorious minutes against the Sixers, and how the Knicks were a plus 14 during that stretch, and how they came from behind to beat the Sixers that game? That duo has logged 32 total minutes since and didn't play against the Thunder. I don't care about the plus minus. The two are minus 28 since that Sixers game. It's heavily skewed by their November 5th loss to the Celtics. The sample overall, though, is just too small to be deemed conclusive one way or the other. It's on Tibbs to make it conclusive. Mitchell Robinson's out with a knee injury. Thoroughly explore the fucking pairing, for crying out loud. Especially if it ensures Toppin never winds up logging fewer than 8 minutes in a game like he did against the Thunder on Sunday. Yes, I want to make it clear Toppin's court time has been up during Robinson's absence. That doesn't make this excusable. Also, that Tibbs needs to be criticized for not implementing different lineups or changes elsewhere. Toppin Randall remaining breaking case of emergency, that receives the most attention, but nearly 90% of Barrett's possessions still come alongside Randall. That's a problem. And heaven forbid Tibbs play more than 2 of his perimeter youngsters at a time. The Strickland had this very interesting tweet that said, if you're like me, you probably saw Cam Reddish and Emmanuel Quickly defending their asses off amidst the chaos and thought, what would the 2 of them look like next to RJ? How could they help him? The trio of IQ, Reddish, and RJ has played 4 minutes together the entire season. Think about that. That's the end of the tweet. This shit matters because self-discovery matters. The Knicks are not title contenders. Right now, they're not even a play-in team. Developing kids and plumbing unproven lineups should be at the top of their to-do list. And yet, I will say, while Tibbs deserves plenty of the blame, the front office of Leon Rose and his primary decision makers have not done nearly enough to justify keeping their jobs. Maybe they have a problem with the way Tibbs coaches the roster. They're also the ones who assembled it, who rushed to extend Julius Randle after his outlier 2020-2021 campaign, who gave Evan Fournier 3 guaranteed years, and who, most recently, and worst of all, continue to give Tibbs a depth chart that allows him to overindulge his commitment to veterans and rigidity that he disguises as continuity. Armchair idiots like myself can call for Tibbs' job. And look, if we're being honest, we know this ends with him losing it. Ian Begley went on SNY and said that Thibodeau's seat is warm. And Ian Begley's is plugged into the New York Knicks as any one person could be. He also said, this is per SNY, if you have another few of those games on the upcoming road trip where the Knicks look just terrible, I think there's going to be a big change made, whether it's Thibodeau or something else. Tibbs is not the only problem. He probably isn't even the Knicks' biggest problem. Another coach could take over and prioritize development or functional flexibility, and that's not going to rescue the Knicks from the carefully crafted, vague position they're in now. Jalen Brunson is their best player. Think about that. He's really good, but you can only go so far as a team when your best player is maybe a top 50 guy. That's why New York is biding its time to trade for a superstar, is what people are going to say. And Shams Charania just said it. He noted during an appearance on FanDuel TV, executives around the league believe that the Knicks are kind of hoarding their first-round picks, just waiting for that next megastar to become available. This theory, though a titillating headline, is just making fine powder out of a record already broken down into smithereens. Acquiring a star has supposedly been this front office's plan all along. They then proceeded to not acquire Donovan Mitchell, a star who wanted to play in New York. Whether mortgaging the farm for him was the right call is a separate matter. The Knicks were literally one first-round pick away or a Quentin Grimes away from making it happen, according to Charania. In reality, they're probably better off. The Cleveland Cavaliers were actually one trade away from imminent, if not instant, title contention. The Knicks were not. And draining their asset pool could have locked them into just a glitzier-looking bubble of mediocrity that they're drifting within now. But what does that say about New York that it was prepared to give up so much just to chase early playoff exits, I guess? Is it that Mitchell was the first of multiple stars? Good luck with that. The superstar trade market, as we've talked about a lot around these parts, isn't conducive to acquiring more than one anymore. Landing Mitchell and Rudy Gobert drained draft pick caches in Cleveland and Minnesota, respectively. Ideally, you want at least one star or a future star in place before you go all in on another. The Knicks don't have that player. They don't. Barrett is the closest they get to a blue chip cornerstone, and he's apparently not a lock to play over Evan Fournier when Tibbs is searching for life. It is here, to me, where New York differs from so many other not good teams. Oklahoma City has its timeline with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Josh Giddey, the injured Chet Holmgren. The Houston Rockets have their timeline with Jalen Green, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Sengun. The Magic have theirs, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, Wendell Carter Jr. The Detroit Pistons have theirs, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren. So on and so forth. It doesn't matter whether you believe in the long-term viability of these young cores. The fact is, they and the possibility they bring exist. And their teams are built around optimizing and prioritizing their development. The Knicks front office hasn't done that for their young guys. Worse, they haven't put the team in a position to even find that Polestar prospect. Skirting an actual rebuild, while questionable, this is someone who wants the Knicks to actually do an overhaul, recognizes that they won't. That idea, though, skirting a rebuild is not without merit when you're in the star acquisition game, but the Knicks don't appear married to that either. Mitchell alone would not have vaulted them into contention, but there are maybe 5 players in the league who would, and none of them are on the verge of getting dealt. Meanwhile, the Knicks themselves seem to know they won't stumble into star arrivals during free agency. Red carpet names aren't leaving the open market anymore, and we sure as hell know New York's front office hasn't amassed all those first-rounders to draft and develop. Much of this could be forgiven if the Knicks were at least invested in fully, coherently exploring the hand they have now. They're not. We wouldn't be here together as a family discussing another meltdown that wanted for rhyme and reason if they were. Is New York rebuilding? Are they open to it? Are they devoted to the superstar chase? Are they worried about re-entering the top 6 of the East first and figuring out the rest later? Do they aspire to have a Charlotte-esque monopoly on the 9 through 11 seeds? These are basic questions, and the inability for New York to answer them is equal parts maddening and long-standing. Fundamental directions are mirrored in how a franchise is built and managed. Built by Leon Rose, managed by Tom Thibodeau, these Knicks are the spitting image of an organization that hasn't the faintest idea of what it's doing or where it's going. Until next time, I leave you with a shout out to the one, the only, the indelible, a former Knick who could have turned everything and anything around, Frank Ntilikina.